Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really pervasive issue, ageism.
Hmm. Something that affects all of us eventually.
Exactly. And we can break it down, right? There are the stereotypes. That's how we think about age.
Right. The mental boxes we put people in.
Then there's prejudice, how we feel about someone based on their age.
Yeah. That emotional reaction.
And finally, discrimination, how we act, how we treat people differently, just because they're young or old.
It's a useful framework.
Yeah.
Think, feel, act. And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on a major World Health Organization report.
Ah, the WHO report. Okay.
Yeah. And its big goal is to lay out evidence-based strategies, things that policymakers, professionals,
Researchers.
and really just all of us,
Yeah.
can actually use to reduce ageism.
And one thing that jumps out straight away from the report is that this isn't just an older person issue.
Absolutely not. It hits all ages, right, from childhood.
Yeah, they give examples like a teenager being, mocked for being into politics because they're too young.
Right? Dismissed. Or think about jobs.
Uh-huh.
Both younger and older people getting shut out because of assumptions about age.
Yeah, too young, not enough experience, or too old, won't fit in, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And the report even mentions an older person accused of witchcraft, which sounds extreme,
Wow, yeah.
but it shows the sheer range of how this bias can manifest.
Okay, so it's broad. And the WHO report looks at different levels too, right?
It does. There's the institutional level, so like laws, policies,
Yeah.
maybe systemic things that disadvantage certain age groups.
Right, vetted in the system.
Then interpersonal, just how we treat each other day to day based on age.
Okay.
And then self-directed ageism, which is interesting.
How so?
It's when we internalize those negative stereotypes and apply them to ourselves as we get older, or even when we're younger, believing we can't do something because of our age.
Ah, I see. So it's coming from inside us too.
Exactly.
And it doesn't exist in a vacuum, does it? It mixes with other biases.
That's a huge point in the report. Intersectionality. How ageism interacts with, say, ableism, sexism, racism.
Mm-hmm.
And when these overlap, the negative impact can get much worse, creates bigger hurdles for people.
Okay, so for this deep dive, our mission really is to unpack this WHO report.
Yeah, let's get under the skin of it.
Understand what ageism is, how big a problem it really is.
The determinants, what makes it more or less likely.
The effects, the actual harm it does.
And crucially, what the evidence says works to fix it. The solutions.
Right, so that you, listening, can get a much clearer picture of this whole thing.
Okay, so back to that definition. Stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination based on age.
Uh-huh.
What's kind of startling is how early it all starts.
Mm-hmm.
The report says kids are soaking up these societal stereotypes, these prejudices.
Really young.
Yeah, very young. From
Mhm.
adults, from media, from their whole environment. And these ideas just get lodged in there,
Like we're downloading biases without even realizing it.
pretty much. And then, as the report points out, we use these stereotypes almost like mental shortcuts.
To make quick judgments.
Exactly. And those shortcuts then shape how we feel and act towards people of different ages.
Yeah.
And even how we see ourselves aging.
Okay, so what makes someone more likely to be ageist specifically towards older people? Does the report identify factors?
It does. It points to a few correlations. Being younger tends to correlate with more ageism toward older adults.
Interesting.
Being male also. Having higher anxiety about death,
Okay, that makes some sense, maybe. Distancing.
possibly. And also having a lower level of formal education. These factors seem linked to more ageist views against older people.
That's quite a mix. Why younger people, I wonder? Lack of perspective, maybe. Or
The report doesn't fully psychoanalyze it, but yeah, maybe less lived experience with aging, maybe more buy-in to youth-centric culture.
and the education link.
Could be less exposure to diverse views, maybe more reliance on those simple stereotypes we talked about.
Right. And death anxiety. Pushing away thoughts of mortality by devaluing older age.
It's plausible, definitely.
Okay, so what about the flip side? What makes someone less likely to be ageist? Towards anyone, young or old.
Well, certain personality traits seem to play a role, though they aren't specified in detail, but perhaps more importantly, and encouragingly,
Yeah.
more intergenerational contact, positive contact specifically.
So actually interacting with people of different ages.
Exactly. It seems to really help break down those preconceived notions and biases. Familiarity and positive experiences work wonders.
That makes intuitive sense.
Hmm.
So who's most at risk of experiencing ageism?
Well, older age itself is a major factor, obviously.
Right.
Also, needing care or support makes individuals more vulnerable.
Hmm.
And here's an interesting one. living in a country with a lower healthy life expectancy.
Really? Why might that be?
The report doesn't explicitly say, but maybe it reflects a different societal value placed on later life stages in those contexts. Speculative, but interesting.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. Any specific industries?
Yes, high-tech and hospitality are mentioned as sectors where ageism seems more prevalent.
Okay.
And critically, being female increases the risk of experiencing ageism when you're younger.
Wow. Okay. So gender interacts there in a specific way for younger women.
It seems so.
Let's talk scale then. How big a problem is this, really? Is it everywhere?
It's incredibly widespread, unfortunately. The report highlights its presence in major institutions, healthcare,
Uh-huh.
the workplace, media, even the legal system.
Okay, can we have some examples? Like, how does it show up in healthcare?
Well, one disturbing example is rationing care based on age. Older people might be denied treatments just because of their age
That's shocking.
and are often excluded from clinical trials and research.
Mm.
This means healthcare might not even be properly tested for them.
So the data itself becomes biased.
Exactly. In the workplace, well, we mentioned it briefly, older workers might get overlooked for promotions, pushed towards retirement,
Yeah.
while younger workers might be seen as unreliable or lacking experience, even if they're perfectly capable.
Right. And the legal system, you mentioned that too.
Yeah, there's an interesting observation that crimes committed by younger people often get a stronger negative reaction
Hmm.
than similar crimes by older individuals. Suggests an age bias in how we perceive responsibility or threat, maybe.
So these biases are really baked into our structures. What about individual attitudes? Any stats on that?
Globally, the headline stat is stark.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 2 people hold ageist attitudes towards older people.
Half the population, wow.
Yeah, and in Europe, where they have better data currently, 1 in 3 people say they've personally been targeted by ageism.
1 in 3.
And here is that surprising finding again. In Europe, young people actually report more age discrimination than other age groups.
That really challenges the common narrative, doesn't it? Okay,
Well,
so we know it's widespread. What are the actual effects, the consequences?
they're really significant, impacting health, well-being, even economics.
Let's start with health for older adults.
For older people, ageism is linked to genuinely poorer health outcomes. Shorter lifespan overall.
Seriously, shorter lives.
Yes. Poorer physical and mental health. Slower recovery if they become disabled, and even cognitive decline.
So societal attitudes can literally impact brain health and how long you live.
It's quite sobering, isn't it?
Absolutely. What else?
It reduces quality of life, increases social isolation and loneliness.
Which we know are terrible for health, too.
Exactly. It can also, sadly, limit older people's ability to express their sexuality and increases their risk of violence and abuse.
That's incredibly grim. And you mentioned it's not just older people affected.
Right. For younger employees, ageism can lead to lower engagement at work, less job satisfaction,
Okay.
and then there's the economic cost. Ageism contributes to poverty and financial insecurity later in life. The report mentions estimates running into billions of dollars globally. Lost productivity, healthcare costs.
Billions. So it's a massive problem, health, social, economic. But the report offers solutions, right? 3 main strategies.
Yes, thankfully. It's not all doom and gloom. The first big strategy is policy and legislation.
Makes sense. Using laws to fight discrimination.
Precisely. Strengthening anti-discrimination laws specifically around age. Creating policies that promote age equality using existing human rights frameworks.
And critical.
And making sure they're enforced at all levels, local, national, international. Laws need teeth to work.
Right. Policy needs proper implementation. What's the second strategy?
Educational interventions.
Okay, teaching people about it.
Yeah, integrating education about ageism at all levels. Primary school, high school, university, even non-formal settings
What's the goal there?
to build empathy, debunk myths about aging in youth, reduce prejudice, give people accurate information, and importantly, counter stereotypical examples.
Challenge those automatic biases we learned about earlier.
Exactly. Education is fundamental for that.
And the third strategy,
Intergenerational contact interventions.
bringing different age groups together.
Yes, intentionally creating positive interactions between generations. The idea is simple. Positive contact reduces prejudice, breaks down stereotypes.
Does it work?
The evidence shows it's pretty effective, especially for reducing ageism against older adults. And it looks promising for reducing bias against younger people, too.
Building bridges through shared experience. Okay, those are the big strategies. The report also has specific recommendations for action, right? 3 of them.
It does. First, invest in what works.
Meaning?
Prioritize and scale up those three strategies:
Mm.
policy, education, intergenerational contact. Adapt them where needed, test them in new places, and then roll them out more widely. Be
Right.
strategic with
Their
resources.
practical, evidence-based approach.
Good.
Second recommendation.
Improve data and research.
Hmm.
We need to understand ageism better.
How widespread is it really everywhere?
Yeah.
How exactly does it affect people? What causes it?
Precisely.
Mhm.
We need better data globally, especially in low and middle income countries. But crucially, the report says, don't wait for perfect data to act. Keep developing and scaling up the interventions now. It's a parallel track. Continue evaluating things like anti-ageism campaigns too.
Okay, so gather better intel while actively fighting the fight. Makes sense. And the final recommendation,
Create a movement to change the narrative.
a movement.
Yeah, recognizing that tackling ageism isn't just for governments or experts, it needs everyone.
All hands on deck.
Exactly. Governments, civil society, UN agencies, businesses, academics, individuals of all ages, all working together, communicating, coordinating action.
A truly collective effort.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
Collaboration is key to making a real dent in this.
So wrapping up this deep dive on the WHO report, the big takeaway seems to be ageism is, well, huge. It's damaging.
Definitely. For individuals, for society,
And this is the hopeful part. We have solid, evidence-based ways to tackle it. We have strategies. We have recommendations.
that's right. There's a clear path forward, outlined by the WHO. It's about saying no to ageism, collectively.
So by actually implementing these strategies, by investing in the research, by joining this global movement,
We can work towards creating that world for all ages.
where people can thrive no matter how old or young they are.
And maybe a final thought for you, the listener.
Mm.
Just take a moment, perhaps later today, to think about how ageism might subtly show up in your own thoughts, or maybe your actions. And consider, what small part you could play in building a society that's truly inclusive for everyone at every age.